Lechi lach to a land that I will show you. Lech lecha to a place you do not know. Lechi lach on your journey I will bless you. And you
This Qumran, the Essenes, and the Dead Sea Scrolls? Yes? Great. So I am Julie Newman. It is a pay-as-you-wish presentation, as always. And this is the view which we will see again and again today during the next hour. Let's get started. So we are on our way along the so-called Jericho Road, which is also known as Road Number 1. And we are driving towards the Dead Sea. We are driving constantly downhill from Jerusalem, and we will be descending for about 3,600 feet within about 25 minutes from Jerusalem downhill to the northern end of the Dead Sea. So as we drive, we can see these numbers. It's minus something and plus something. And then finally, we get to minus 300. Minus 300 is 300 meters below sea level. All right. And this is approximately where we normally stop for a coffee. And then we keep driving a little bit further to the lowest petrol station on earth, the one with the camels next to it. We take a right, and within another 5 minutes, we reach our destination, which is known as Qumran. So before we start actually exploring this place called Qumran, we have to begin with the story, because actually the reason for us to go there today and the reason for so many people to visit Qumran is not actual Qumran, it is the story behind, or better to say, what was found there. So I'm quite sure that quite a few of you are familiar with the story, but I have to tell that story again because this is how it all began. So back in the end of 1947, we had two relatively young Bedouins, and you can see them here. This is a real photo, okay? Muhammad Adib and his cousin Juma Muhammad. Now, Muhammad Adib, that's his name, but he came, well, okay, you know what? Forget it. Sorry, I will start it differently. These two Bedouins, they were looking for a goat, or at least that's the story, okay? And we have no reason to doubt it. So probably they were looking for a lost goat, which is very similar to this code you see in front of you. This is not the original one. This is the younger one. The photo was taken a few days ago. But they were looking for a lost goat. And as they were looking for a goat, they found a real treasure which can be hardly compared to anything else. I mean, they literally were looking for a goat. They threw a stone into a cave to find out how deep that cave is and to make sure that there are no demons around. And then they broke a jar. Again, I apologize. I guess most of you know that story, but we have to start somewhere. That broken jar originally looked like this jar you see on my slide in the right lower corner, okay? This is the original one. This is the original surviving one, the non-broken one, because after they broke a jar, they kept running around and looking for more jars because it proved to be so, well, income supplying. This is the non-broken jar, which is stored in the Israel Museum in the Shrine of the Book, which is the special part of the museum with the collection of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So they got into this first cave, they broke a jar, and they found little leather pieces, like this piece you see in front of you just above the goat. And there were actually quite a few of these weird looking, with maybe some weird inscriptions on them, pieces of scrolls. And since they were not sure what can they do with it, actually, in the first place, they thought that they can make new sandals out of them. Okay? Well, if you want to have a sandals, so you better use a shoemaker, right? So they approached a shoemaker. This is the true story, okay? And that shoemaker, his name is Kandu, okay, short for Iskander. And this is the gentleman you see in the left lower corner here. This is Kandu. Kandu was a shoemaker indeed. He lived in Bethlehem, and he was also an antiquity dealer. Now he looked at these first scrolls brought by the Bedouins, and he said to himself, I guess it was to himself, not to the Bedouins, hey, this is something better than just a sandal. This is actually ancient. And he was right. Now he was so positive that this is something really precious that he, Charlie Kandu, contacted this gentleman here with the glasses, and this gentleman is actually the father of the Israeli archaeology of today, and his name is Eliezer Lipa Sukenik, professor of archaeology of Jerusalem University, the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Actually, even though he's a great professor, his son is better known, and his son actually has to do with our story later. So Professor Sukenik is the father of Yigael Yadin. And Yigael Yadin was the commander of the Palmach, of the striking unit, and Yigael Yadin was the one who excavated Masada. But he also has to do with the story. So Charlie Kandu contacted Professor Sukenik and said, listen, I think I have that feeling that I have something interesting for you, which you might want to take a look at. And Professor Sukenik, he knew Charlie Kandu, and he said to himself, well, I should go. Now, the problem was that Sukenik was in Jerusalem, Kandu and the scrolls were in Bethlehem, okay? And they scheduled an appointment, not by Zoom, but personally, between a Jew and a Palestinian in Bethlehem on a very special date. And that date was November 29, 1947. This is when they were supposed to meet. Now, if you're not sure about what's so special about the day, this is the day of the declaration of the partition plan by the UN. And so Yigael Yadin begged his father not to go to Bethlehem on this day, and eventually his father did not go. But the next day he felt that he must do it. So he went to Bethlehem, no matter what. This was the first day of the independence war. But he went to Bethlehem, and he saw the scrolls, and he purchased the very first Dead Sea Scrolls, including the Thanksgiving Scroll, the War of the Sons of Light against the Sons of Darkness, and the book of Isaiah. These are the first 3 scrolls purchased by the Jewish nation from Charlie Kandu. Now, the Bedouins actually found 7 scrolls. So 3 belong to Sukenik, meaning the Jewish nation, while the other 4 scrolls, including the longest, the most important Dead Sea Scroll, which is the Great Isaiah Scroll, was purchased by another gentleman. You see, this is Saint Charlie Kandu. He is the owner of the scroll, and he sold the other 4 scrolls to this gentleman on the left, and this is the Archbishop Athanasius, a Christian archbishop from the Christian quarter in the old city of Jerusalem. The Archbishop very soon realized that it's better for him to leave the area because we are already during the independence war, and he left to United States with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then there was a war, and then Bethlehem and Charlie Kandu included were out of reach of the Jewish nation until 1967. Athanasius carried to United States the Great Isaiah Scroll, the Community Rule Scroll, which is the most important, the most detailed information about the sect which wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, and also the Pesher of Habakkuk and the Genesis Apocryphon. You can see pieces of that scroll on the photo. That photo on the right was taken in the shrine of the book. And then in the early 50s, the Archbishop Athanasius decided that he wants to sell the 4 scrolls. He just needed money. So you see, the 4 Dead Sea Scrolls, that was an ad in the Wall Street Journal. That ad was noticed by a Jew, and that American Jew happened to be a good friend of the gentleman on the left. And this gentleman on the left is the son of his father. This is Yigael Yadin. Yigael Yadin listened to the story, talked to his father, and he realized that this is something we must achieve. So, to make the long story short, the 4 Dead Sea Scrolls were purchased from the Archbishop, and now we have the first 7 Dead Sea Scrolls in our hands. And what you can see on the right upper corner is the letter which was written by Yigael Yadin to Teddy Kollek. Teddy Kollek, the legendary mayor of Jerusalem, announcing that, hey, I paid $1 million US, but we have the Dead Sea Scrolls. What they did not have at the moment was the longest Dead Sea Scroll ever found. It was probably, well, not probably, we know that it was longer than what we have today, but even today, after having lost some parts of it, this temple scroll is about 24 feet long. Okay. What we see on the screen now is, of course, a small part of it. Now, if you are interested in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were all read and interpreted and placed online. So if you go to this address, okay, the DSS, the Dead Sea Scroll Collection, which belongs to the Israel Museum, you can find the Dead Sea Scrolls, the photos, you can see the explanation. It is incredible source of information about the Dead Sea Scrolls if you are interested. And what is interesting about this particular scroll, the temple scroll, is that it describes a temple in Jerusalem. But the temple it describes is totally different from the temple as we know it from the writings of Josephus Flavius. So probably the people who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, they wanted the temple to be different from what it actually was. And that might provide a clue to who they are. But that's to be discussed in a minute. The temple scroll was not sold by Charlie Kando to neither side, and it was stored under the floor of his shop in Bethlehem for 19 years. In the last day of the 6 Days War, an intelligence unit was sent to find Charlie Kando. You know, we had the 6 Days War. We had still the end of the battles in Sinai and in Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. And yet you see these 3 people from an intelligence unit number 504. And their duty was to find Kando. Here he is. Okay, this is Charlie Kando, second from the left. And to find the temple scroll because it was known that he possesses it. And yes, indeed, 1967, we had the temple scroll. Okay. In the meanwhile, you see, we have 20 years which passed between 1947, the first Dead Sea Scrolls uncovered by the Bedouins, and, you know, 1967. Yeah, that's him. We already have a total of over 900 fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The problem is that almost all of them, except of the 7, okay, the first 7 purchased by Sukenik and Yigael Yadin, they belong to Jordan. Because as soon as it became known that these are the most ancient fragments of the Bible, which we ever saw and ever had, people started searching for more and more scrolls. Now, as you know, in the end of the Independence War, the northern end of the Dead Sea was part of Jordan. It was not part of Israel. And today, this is part of the West Bank. And therefore, except of the first 7 scrolls, the rest of the scrolls which were found in Qumran, they were possessed by Jordan. And the Jordanians placed them on display in a museum in East Jerusalem, which is known as the Rockefeller Museum. By the way, it is still there. It's an amazing, beautiful museum. And then in 1967, when we acquired East Jerusalem, we also acquired the Rockefeller Museum, and we also acquired the rest of the Dead Sea Scrolls. In such a way, almost every single Dead Sea Scroll is now in the hands of Israel, and it is either displayed or stored in the shrine of the Book of the Israel Museum. Now, generally speaking, these scrolls are divided into 3 types, okay? As you can see, about 40% are copies of texts from the Hebrew scriptures, meaning the Tanakh, the Old Testament. And we have numerous copies of each text, of each book, of each scroll, except of one. Okay, there is one book in the Bible, in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh, which does not exist in Qumran, which we don't have a Dead Sea Scroll version, okay? And this is the book of Esther. So as far as the Dead Sea Scroll collection is concerned, there is no Purim. We don't really know why, but this is a fact, okay? No Purim for Qumran. And on the other hand, as you can see, about 30% are texts from the Second Temple period. I mean, same time as the Tanakh, but they were not included in the Hebrew Bible. They were not canonized, like the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Tobit, and other books, and also Psalms. You see, we have additional 52, 53, 54, 55 additional form Psalms which do not exist in the Tanakh, okay? What is interesting about that, you know, the Psalms are attributed to David, right? It's believed traditionally that King David wrote the Psalms. And if you read the Psalms, so there is one thing which is really missing. Like, you really feel that if you were King David, you would write a psalm about it. And this is the battle against Goliath, right? If you read the Psalms, Goliath is not mentioned, and yet you would expect it to be mentioned. So here in Qumran, in Psalm number 152, this is the psalm about the victory, about Goliath. And this is, again, this is very interesting why it was not included in the Bible as we know it. We have no idea, but that's it. And there are another 30% of the Dead Sea Scrolls are manuscripts which belong to a certain sect. Now, unfortunately, these guys who wrote the scrolls, they never mentioned their names. I mean, they do name themselves the community of the Yachad. Yachad means together, the community of together. But that's it. Now, when we read historical documents, when we read Josephus Flavius, when we read Philo, whoever we read, we don't have even one word about the community of the Yachad. And therefore, we have a debate among the scholars who are the community of the Yachad, and do they actually belong to the ruins of Qumran, which we're going to visit later? Do they actually, there is a whole misunderstanding about the connection between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Essenes, which I will mention now, and the ruins of Qumran. Okay, so basically we have more questions than answers, but that only contributes to how amazing this place is. So, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found by the Bedouins. And as soon as the Bedouins realized that it is something so precious, they kept working and digging and looking for more and more scrolls. And this gentleman, Roland Devaux, Father Roland Devaux, he was a Catholic scholar, historian, and archaeologist, belonging to a Christian school in East Jerusalem. And he became the chief archaeologist and the chief specialist on the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we are talking about the Jordanian times. And later, as a chief specialist and archaeologist, he was replaced by Professor Hanan Eshel, and that's after 1967. Of course, actually, he passed away recently. So one of the most interesting questions is who wrote the scrolls? And the prevailing theories are either the Sadducees and the Essenes. Now, we need another presentation to discuss the whole thing. So to make the long story short, I will just say that both Sadducees and Essenes are two out of the three sects of ancient Judaism mentioned and described by Josephus Flavius. Okay? All right. Now, let's forget about the Sadducees because they're not so appealing. The Essenes are amazing. And personally, I believe that they wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, and actually most scholars agree the same. So let's assume for a minute that the Essenes wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, and therefore let's look at them. Let's just know a bit about them. Okay? So the Essenes, who are you? They are described detailedly by Josephus Flavius, the guy with a long nose on the left, and Philo from Alexandria, the guy with a long nose on the right. Both are Jewish, both lived in the 1st century BCE, 1st century AD, and they both describe the Essenes. And again, the Essenes are one of the three sects of ancient Judaism. Okay? Agreed about that. So let's see what they tell us about them. On the western side of the Dead Sea, and that's exactly where we are, outside the area of the harmful fumes on the coast, lives the lone community of the Essenes, the most wonderful of all the sects in the world. And so for thousands of generations, the community continues its existence forever. Isn't it pretty? By the way, what you see on this photo is taken from the ruins of Qumran, and this greenery, these palm trees, belong to a kibbutz, which is right next door to this ancient location of probably the Essenes, kibbutz called Kalia. And then the blue water, this is the Dead Sea water, and across the water, this is Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. These are the Moab Mountains. Here on the left, you can see the very northern end of the Dead Sea. And this is the northern end, which we reach by this Jericho road, which we drove from Jerusalem. So let's see what else we know about the Essenes, thanks to Philo and Josephus Flavius. We're talking about 4,000 or more. They are engaged in various crafts. They do not accumulate money and gold. They have no property. That sounds a little bit like a kibbutz, isn't it? And actually, the more we read about the community, the more we understand that they actually live like a very, very tightly bonded community, and they shared everything. We may say that this is the first kibbutz ever. So the three things that they mostly care about are love of God, love of morals, and love of friends. And none of them has a special home just for him, which is not shared by the others, but the house is open to all to live there together. Isn't it beautiful? And, as I was preparing this presentation, I felt like we really have to look at it. We would really, well, you know, it would be so much better for us if we can become just a little bit more like the Essenes in generally speaking, but also especially now. I mean, if we would be able to focus on love of our neighbors, of our friends, of not accumulating money and just love, you know, we have to try to be just a little bit more like the Essenes. So they surpass the rest of the Jews in their love for one another. They avoid the pleasures of flesh, seeing them as evil. They seek to control their spirit, and even marriage is wrong in their eyes. Well, this is something I disagree, since they believe that none of the women keep their faith to her one husband. This is unfair, but this is what they believed. All right. Now, this is something interesting, something very spiritual. That bodies are corruptible and that the matter they are made of is not permanent. Okay, this is true. But that the souls are immortal and continue forever, and that they come out of the most subtle air and are united to their bodies as to prison, and therefore they did not fear death. Actually, death would be better for them because you're released from the freedom. And there are also those among them who undertake to foretell things to come. This is interesting, right? They use several sorts of purifications and being perpetually conversant in the discourses of the prophets, and they almost make no mistakes. Again, I wish we could know them now. And well, they really care about purification. They really care about bathing. And look, this is something I really loved about them. You see at the very bottom it says, silence thus kept in their house appears to foreigners like some tremendous mystery. Well, I think that you have to understand, you have to know Jews and Israelites to understand how impossible silence is. Would you agree? I mean, they were really, really different, these Essenes. And you see, they would purify themselves, they would keep silent, and some of their habits, some of their traditions were quite different from the habits and traditions of the other parts of ancient Judaism, and actually from Judaism as we know today, the Orthodox Judaism of present days. For instance, you see we have this little, well, what do you call it, a hoe, maybe, right? There's this tool up here, a hoe. Can I call it so? Yeah, probably some sort of an axe. Okay, this tool, quite a few of those were found in the ruins of Qumran, and Josephus Flavius describes that they were not allowed to defecate inside the camp. If you need to go to the bathroom, you had to leave the premises of the camp, and only then you could do whatever you need to do. And every newcomer would get a special axe to cover his, you know, his deeds. Now, this is very interesting because according to overall Jewish tradition, there is something called the Range of Shabbat, right? The boundaries beyond which you are not allowed to go during Shabbat, because you are not allowed to carry things. Okay, and because you cannot carry anything beyond this Shabbat range, and Essenes agreed upon that, and they could not carry the axe outside of the camp on Shabbat, so they could not go to the bathroom on Shabbat. Okay, I know a few people which would not survive the community just because of that. While in the Mishnah, we read something exactly opposite. A Talmid Chacham, a Jewish scholar of the Mishnah time, okay, Mishnah meaning 2nd, 3rd, 3rd centuries AD, almost same time as the Essenes. a scholar is not allowed to live in a city which does not have a bathroom. Even more so, we have an interesting expression, which is who is a wealthy person? The one who has a bathroom next to his table, which is exactly the opposite from the understanding of the Essenes. Next week, we are going to Tzipori, and I will show you that toilet by the table. Okay, this is a true story. You will see it for yourself. Anyhow, back to Qumran and Essenes. You're not going to the bathroom during Shabbat, period. If you need to go, that's your problem. And we have a few other differences. All right. A few more specifics of the Essenes. And again, I wish we would adopt at least some of it. Exercise piety towards God, justice towards man, do not harm to anyone, show fidelity to all men, assist to the righteous, perpetually a lover of truth, and they were not allowed to discover any of their doctrines to the others. The person who joins the community will swear to keep the secret and will preserve the books belonging to their sect and the names of the angels. And maybe the books they were preserving are the books which are now stored in the shrine of the book. So, you know, they kept their secret for 2,000 years, and now we know these secrets. So now, when we talked about the significance of the Dead Sea Scrolls and a little bit about the Essenes, which are the most amazing sect of all, and probably they wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, let's start touring the ruins. So now we are inside the visitor center, and we will watch about 3 minutes of the movie. The actual movie is longer, so you will see just a few, parts of it. And that will be a nice introduction to the tour of the archaeological site. So enjoy.
At the end of a day's work, we bathed again, and after purifying ourselves, gathered together for the evening meal. A third of the night has passed, but of these things I am not permitted to tell you. We find that you, somewhere in the future, would hear and see these words. It is God's wondrous plan that brought you today to this pure and sacred place. And God willing, perhaps the secrets may be revealed unto you.
Okay, so that was the actual end of the actual movie there. And when the movie ends, you see that the screen is lifted, and then you can start walking into this little, introduction room, and then you walk out. The exit is on the other side, and then you finally find yourself in the desert in front of the ruins. So we will start walking inside in a minute. I just draw your attention to something in that movie. If you listen carefully, so he mentioned John the Baptist, right? He mentioned John the Baptist, and then the guy who tells the story says that, oh yeah, we also had somebody named John. So John the Baptist is nowhere to be found in Qumran. He is not mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, this is all about theories and wishful thinking. But as you read the scrolls and as you look at the habits and the behavior of the Essenes, so this is quite similar to the traditions and behaviors of early Christians. And therefore, a very commonly accepted theory is that the Essenes were the precursors, or they gave ideas to John the Baptist and first Christians, and maybe even John the Baptist was a member of the Essene sect for a while. This is all about maybe and maybe, but again, this is very commonly accepted by Christians, and so 90%, I guess, of the visitors during normal years in Qumran are Christian tourists who came here to find the very early roots of early Christianity. All right, so this is why John the Baptist is mentioned here. So now we start exploring Qumran. These are replicas of the jars in which the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. We walk into it, and it is a little bit sort of a childish, I would say, exhibit, but still it gives us a little bit of information and helps our imagination. And you can see a mikveh. Okay, this side is full.
Looks like Julia was kicked off.
Her screen was frozen for a while. I think she probably had a local interruption.
It wasn't, the sharing part wasn't frozen.
No, but her screen was. Well, let's stand by. This is all live, coming from 5,000 to 6,000 miles away. We expect these kinds of things every once in a while. It's part of the game. But I did put up on chat the two addresses I gave out at the very beginning.
So did I.
Who might? Thank you, Alana. She's so efficient.
Yeah, maybe.
So we'll just stand by. She will probably, unless there's a power failure or something like that.
I'll message her.
Yeah, go ahead, and I will take care of when she checks back in. We'll immediately put her back up as a. Meanwhile, everybody can mumble among themselves.
Well, hold on one second. I have to make it so they can. Okay.
Any reason why chat is disabled?
I undisabled it. It's a setting that happens when Steve creates it, and I usually remember to uncreate.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, I was about to message you.
I'm back. Sorry, I have no idea what happened.
We were talking about a mikvah.
Okay. I need you to make me a co-host again so you can
You
share
are
my
now.
story.
You're okay, Julia.
I am okay. So it
Yeah.
didn't let me to share my screen.
You're a co-host.
Let me try. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, now it's working. Okay.
Okay.
Wait a sec. Back to. Oh, right.
Okay. Interruption
No.
over.
Oh yeah. I was not on a presentation mode. What's well. Okay. Sorry. That's it. I'm fully back. So we left this little introduction room, and here we are at the open air, and we are looking at cave number 1. This is the first cave where the most important scrolls of war were found. Actually, this is amazing, because the reason why we know all that, the reason why we have that many scrolls is because these 2 Bedouins found the most amazing, the great Isaiah scroll in cave number 1. If they would not be so lucky, if the lost girl would go to another cave, nothing would have happened. So sometimes we need a miracle to help us. This is the reconstruction of what the archaeological site looked like. And you can see all these blue areas. These are the mikvahs and the purification ritual baths and the cisterns. Quite a bit of water. Okay, even before we enter, you can see this canal which starts somewhere in the mountains. We are about to hike this way, and that canal ends here, and then there is an opening at the bottom of the wall, and then the canal proceeds. Okay, it is a restored one, but we can see that Qumran is all about water, maybe because the Essenes needed purification. So this is a nice example of a ritual bath of the mikveh, and another example, and another example. And now here you can see a little storage and an opening, and this is the water storage called a otar, the treasure. This is where the water was stored in order to refill and renew the water in the mikveh. What I'm trying to say is that we know for sure that some very, very faithful, very, very obedient, and very, very pure-oriented Jews live here. Probably these are the Essenes. And we also have a water cistern just to store water, not for ritual purposes. You need to drink something occasionally. And this is the stove, which was used to make all these clay vessels we saw before. And this is another general look of the Qumran ruins. And this is a long and totally empty room. But you see, this is what was found here. These are lamps. These are little oil lamps, and plenty of those were found all over this empty room. And the suggestion is that we found so many lamps here because, as we read in the scroll of the Yachad and in the books of Josephus Flavius, they were spending 1/3 of the night reading, learning, and writing. So, yeah, you need a lamp. And, this is where the pottery was stored. This is the original pottery. This photo was taken in the Israel Museum, and you see that the quality is not so good because of the glass. And when we turn around, we literally turn around, we see this opening of the cave. You see this is cave number 4. And inside cave number 4, the archaeologists found hundreds of little pieces of a scroll, and it was obvious that somebody took a large scroll and just ruined it. Okay, somebody took a sword or a big knife or something like that and cut it in pieces. Why? We don't know. But the theory is that a Roman soldier who was so pissed off during the Great Jewish Revolt against the Romans, he made it to Qumran. We know that Qumran was ruined and abandoned in 68 AD, meaning exactly during the Great Jewish Revolt. So probably a Roman soldier who was so angry and hated everybody, he made it into the cave, he found a scroll, and he just ruined it, okay? He cut it in pieces. And this is how archaeologists found it, well, 1,900 years later, which is quite amazing. Now, another thing, you see, now we turned around and we're looking west. We're looking towards, well, the Dead Sea is behind us, and the mounds, the rocks, the cliffs are in front of us. And here on the left and downhill, you can see a dry, very dry riverbed called Qumran. Remember, we saw cisterns, we saw ritual baths. We need water here. Where does the water come from? There is not even one spring around. So where does the water come from? Well, we need to store, we need to stop, and we need to collect whatever rainfall, whatever flash flood occurs in this dry riverbed. And so if you look carefully, can you see I hope you can see my blue arrow. And this blue arrow touches something which looks like a little white path. Yeah, can you see it? I hope so. All right. Now we are going to follow this white path soon. So please keep it in mind. This is the treasury, and this is Sharona, of course. See, this is where hundreds of silver coins were found. Maybe this is the communal treasury of the Essenes. Remember, they did not possess any private property. You have to store the money somewhere. So maybe this is it. And this is the dining room. I don't know if they had falafel, probably not. But when I think of Israeli food, it's always about falafel. And yes, falafel, no falafel, I'm not sure. But some stone-made cups were found around here. Now, stone-made cups are expensive, are difficult to make, but they cannot become impure. So if you really care about being pure, you will bother to have stone-made cups. And here we are. Okay, we climbed to the watchtower. Let's take a look around us. Okay. Yeah, a little bit wind. That's what the overall ruins look like. Turn around. We are now facing the cliff. We are on our way to find the water source. All right. Take the last look at a cave here on the left, another cave here on the right, and right in front of you, if you look carefully, you can see that this part in between the two caves, there is like a strip which is a bit whiter than the rest of the cliff, right? This is significant. Here it is. Let's take another closer look at it. White path. Down here we have the dry riverbed. And this is actually a waterfall. During the flash flood, once a year, twice a year, but that becomes a waterfall. Hard to imagine, but that's what it is. And the rest of the time when there is no water, people go rappelling down the cliff, and this is something we made ourselves. So imagine that you are an Essene, and you are here, you need the water, there is a flash flood, there is a waterfall. You can make a dam down below, but then you will have to carry the water uphill to your home. You don't want to carry the water uphill. So what you need to do, you need to climb to here where you see this blue path, blue strip. And if you build a dam up here, so then you can make a water reservoir, and then you can make a canal which will bring the water all the way to your level of your home. And this is exactly what they did. So let's go. Okay, we are walking along the canal. You see that canal on our right-hand side? This is a partly restored canal, and we are on our way now to the place where the cistern and the dam are supposed to be. And you will see that touring can be tough but fun. Here I am sitting in a little canal which was made in the rock by the Essenes. Here you can see an opening, and here you can see me crawling inside the opening as if I was a water flow. Okay, being water is no easy, but on the other hand, then you can take a fun photo. And then Sharona took another photo of myself, so you can see me happy about succeeding to get out of here, and the Dead Sea is behind me. And here you can see the no dam. I mean, there was a dam for sure, and everything which you see above this bar was a water storage. And then the water would flow all the way into the cisterns and the ritual baths. But since this dam blocks the way for the flesh flood, you have to maintain it. And since nobody maintained the dam for the last 1,900 years, actually more than that already, so it does not exist. But it was here, and the water supply system is still visible, which is amazing. I hope you can see what I'm trying to show you, but on your left-hand side, you see this blue what thing? Okay, inside there is a tiny little bit of a plaster. This white plaster is a white waterproof plaster which was placed by the Essenes at the edges of the water canal. So this is a clue for us to understand that the whole canal was indeed waterproof. We are talking about a water supply system. And let's take another look. Okay, we are standing at the No Dam overlooking the Dead Sea. Once again, you can see how steep it is and how deep and how tall the waterfall is. And the last thing we have to take a look at before we leave Qumran is a cemetery. This is the Qumran Cemetery, and each strip of rocks is a grave. Most of these graves are untouched, but some of these graves were excavated and examined. So we can tell that these are indeed graves for 2,000 years old. Of course, we cannot tell whether these are Essenes or not Essenes, but we can tell that these people lived here some 2,000 years ago. We are talking about almost 1,000 graves found all over the place. Some of them belong to men, others belong to women, which might be seen as a contradiction to the fact that the Essenes disliked marriage. Who knows? And something which is brand new, the National Parks Authority made a new cave trail which starts at Qumran and goes directly north along this mountain ridge. The trail is about 1 mile long, very comfortable as you see, and it enables you to see the caves where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Unfortunately, we're not allowed into the caves. I have no idea why, but this is the National Parks Authority rule. But at least we can see the caves from, as close as possible. So we will be hiking this trail from Qumran all the way to its end. Okay, this is the end of the trail. And again, this is Sharona. And the reason why we will stop here, well, first because this is the end of the trail, but also because a cave which is right in front of us now, okay, oh no, better to say now, left-hand side on the photo, is the cave where the copper scroll was found. And this is the only scroll which is not parchment, which is actually copper, which is actually metal. This is what it looks like. And this is the only meaningful scroll which is not in Israel. It is in Jordan, because in the 6 days war, rather than being on display in the museum in Jerusalem, in Rockefeller Museum in Jerusalem. It was on a temporary display in the museum in Amman, the capital of Jordan. And therefore it stayed there. So the copper scroll is to be found and seen in Amman. And this is a very special scroll. One, because it's copper. Second, because it describes a location of over 60 treasures. It is very, very precise. For instance, you see it says that if you go from Jericho to Schacha, and we know for a fact that Schacha is Qumran, okay, this is the ancient name of Qumran, in the pillar cave of the two openings looking eastward, an amazing treasure to be found. Okay, so an Israeli archaeologist whose name is Pesach Baradun, when he looked at this cave, he said, hey, this is the one. This is the pillar cave of the two openings. It's known as the Twins Cave. And he believed that the treasure will be found here. So unfortunately, he did not find the treasure. And unfortunately, we never found even one treasure out of the over 60 treasures described in the copper scroll. So we either misunderstand the copper scroll, or maybe it's just a wishful thinking. We do not know. But there is the copper scroll describing locations of amazing treasures, and maybe one of us will be lucky to find at least one of them. So that's it. Thank you for joining me, and I wish you all find your treasure as soon as possible. So I'm done. Thank you all. And if we have any questions here. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Wonderful.
Hey, Jennifer, thank you. Yeah, we actually need a treasure here. We really need to imitate the Essenes, and we need a treasure, either a spiritual or a financial, or both. We need some good stuff here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, Elaine, do we know what happened to the Essenes? Well, the Essenes disappeared. You see, we know that Qumran was ruined by the Romans as part of their suppression of the Great Jewish Revolt. And if we are right, and the Essenes lived there, so apparently, they were either killed or forced to leave. The Essenes disappeared. They were never mentioned after the revolt, and apparently some of them were killed, the others left. The third were just dissolved in the other parts of the Jewish society. But simply we do not have Essenes today, but we also don't have any Sadducees today. So these are just ancient sects of ancient Judaism which changed and disappeared as a separate entities. And some Christians will tell you that the Essenes were converted to Christianity, when Christianity became a separate religion. Okay, yes, discovery of the scroll was a miracle in a way, sure. Even if the shepherds had tossed a stone in that particular cave, it sure didn't have to hit a jar. Yeah, well, it's like in the Passover Haggadah. If not this, so that. If not this, so that, and that. So exactly. This is that's true. The lamps were only one per long table, so the suggestion is that they were not the lamps used to copy the scrolls. Well, the suggestion is that the fact we found lamps does not prove that they actually copied scrolls. The fact that we found mikvahs does not prove that we're talking about the Essenes. The fact that we found so much money maybe actually proves that we're not talking about the Essenes, because the Essenes were not supposed to have so much money. the fact that we have actually a wall, we have a pretty good fortified place, okay, we're not sure that it has to do with the Essenes. Some of the specifics of the scrolls actually suggest that they were written by the Sadducees. It is a very complicated issue. So the bottom line is we have quite a few scholars which totally disagree with making a connection between the Dead Sea Scrolls and Qumran. Okay, like what they say is it's just a coincidence that the Dead Sea Scrolls were found next to this ruined settlement. It is a coincidence. And other scrolls will say that it is a coincidence that the Dead Sea Scrolls look as if they were written by the same people described by Josephus Flavius as the Essenes. So we have different understandings. Personally, I prefer the Essenes theory just because I like the Essenes. Okay, what portion of the Dead Sea Scrolls have been pieced together? What portion has been translated? Okay, 100% was translated. It doesn't mean that we don't keep translating them, because every now and then we have a new scholar investigating and reading the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then we have new translations, we have new understandings. And so even though they were all translated, but like translating the Bible, we have different versions of translating the Bible, and some versions are way better than the others. The Dead Sea Scrolls have been pieced together, actually all of them. I mean, some of them, they had only 2 parts to them, like the Copper Scrolls. Others had hundreds of pieces which were combined together and made into a scroll. This is an amazing work, which is still under way.
Julia, there was a great secret about the scholarship of the translation that went on for probably 20 or 30 years with a very private group that wouldn't allow any. What's the story there?
Right. Yeah. But it's all over. I mean, everything is on. You can Google it. We have 100% digital versions of the Dead Sea Scrolls. When you, which you have a photo of the Dead Sea Scroll, like scan of the Dead Sea Scroll, so you can read it for yourself. Assuming you can read Hebrew, but you can read it for yourself. You can read the translation. You can read the different translations of the scroll. You can read the understandings of the different scholars of the scrolls, etc. But it's all online. Okay, all of it. Yeah, and yes, it was sort of a private secret of a small group of scholars. That's true. Okay. There are many books. Yeah. Could lack of Book of Ruth, not Ruth, of Esther, be missing only the result of her not locating it yet? Yeah, of course. This is possible. Even though, like, first of all, we don't know. Okay, the fact is we did not find the book of Esther. Okay, why? Maybe because we just did not. The other suggestion is that the book of Esther is the only book in the Bible, and this is an interesting piece of information, okay? This is the only book in the Bible which does not have the name of God in it. Yeah, all right. Next time you read, pay attention, okay? There is no God in that story. So the suggestion is that since the Essenes, or whoever that was who wrote the scrolls, they were so obedient and so theological oriented that they did not feel like keeping and copying a book which does not have the name of God. Okay, but this again, this is a theory. Yeah. Rectangle. Yeah, exactly, Larry. Thank you. That was the shape. Yeah, the rectangle. Okay. Yeah. Well, Esther may have been written later. This is true. but the books which were found there, the oldest one was written in the 3rd century BCE, which means after the book of Esther already existed. So the fact that, yes, it is the later one, but it was already there. Okay, thank you. David, very educational. Well, that's great. I hope you enjoyed it, David. It was not just about education. The copper scroll looks pristine. Is any of it falling apart? Yeah, yeah. They did lose some little pieces, but it's almost it's almost intact. It's almost perfect. Wendy, do you think if the copper scroll was found in Jordan, that the other scrolls could be in caves in Jordan? They were found there, but we don't know about it. Well, this is a good question. I mean, again, we don't know. We assume that if they would find, I mean, the founds were made during the Jordanian rule of West Bank and Jordan, of course. What I'm trying to say is that I think that when the Jordanians found the Dead Sea Scrolls, they published it. So when it doesn't matter whether they found it in West Bank or original Jordan, okay, but if they would find something of that sort, so they would publish it. I don't think they would keep it as a secret. Yeah, all the Dead Sea Scrolls have been translated, right? Is there a lot of fraud copies? The objects found in Qumran? I'm not sure. Fraud copies, you mean like fake replicas? Yeah. I'm not aware of fake copies. I mean, there are numerous copies of the objects found in Qumran, but they are official replicas. I mean, could it be that somebody made a replica and sold it as an original? Probably, yeah. I mean, we have people who actually make money of making fake antiquities. So yeah, maybe. All right. Gail, you're right. I've been on the last trail you showed. When I don't know. I mean, this trail is not even open yet. You cannot yet officially hike it. It's a brand new one. They declared its opening a few months ago, but they did not actually open it. So you cannot yet hike it. If you did, so well, good for you. All right. Were the Dead Sea Scrolls put in the caves as a way of burying scrolls that were damaged? No. It's not a gniza. It's not a gniza. Gniza is a place to bury damaged scrolls. In this case, we believe that the scrolls were placed there either to save them, maybe in the beginning of the Great Revolt, maybe they were placed there like sort of a library, maybe, and the scholars which believe that they were not written by the Essenes, okay? So these scholars suggest that they were written by the Sadducees, which is another ancient Jewish sect, which escaped from Jerusalem after the temple was ruined and they needed to hide them somewhere. So anyhow, but we're not talking about Gniza. We are talking about a safe storage for the scrolls, and definitely people who placed it there, they were hoping to be able to come back and use these scrolls or add more scrolls. So this is more of a library. Harry, if the treasure is measured in talents, its value would easily exceed 3 billion today. Yeah. Well, we actually had so many people looking for the treasures described in the copper scrolls. We have a few stories of Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones types. And actually, the guy who made the most efforts to find the treasures, his last name was Jones, and the Indiana Jones movie is actually based upon a true story about this guy who was looking for the treasures described in the Copper Scroll. He found nothing, but he lived here for quite a few years. He had a family here, and eventually his children, he was not Jewish, his children stayed in Israel and were converted to Judaism, and now we have a third generation of Indiana Jones living in one of the settlements of the West Bank. So, but he never found the treasure. Okay, more תודה רבה. Thank you so much. Some sun.
Julia?
Yeah, it was very sunny. Yes.
Can we assume this environment, the temperature and so forth that exists today is consistent with 2,000 years ago?
Yeah, the estimation is yes. We have quite a few debates among scholars regarding a bit later period, like the Byzantine period. We have some scholars which suggest that there were more rainfall in the 5th and 6th centuries AD. But the most common understanding today that the climate did not actually change. So it was dry, it is dry, and that contributed to, the survival of the scrolls. Wendy asks, so the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in Israel? Well, they were found in Israel, present-day Israel. They were actually found in British Mandate Palestine and then in Jordan at the time. So, it's a question of definition, all right? But today, yes, Qumran is in Israel, and this is why we can be there now. How did we get possessions of them? Well, okay, so as I said, the first 3 scrolls were purchased by Professor Sukenik from Kando in Bethlehem, and then the other 4 scrolls were purchased by his son in New York. And then the other scrolls, which were on display and in a storage in the Rockefeller Museum in East Jerusalem, when East Jerusalem was reunited with West Jerusalem, so then we got the rest of the Dead Sea Scrolls, except of the Copper Scroll, which was and still is in Amman. Okay, so if it was not clear, so I hope now it is. It is getting hotter now with the global warming. Yeah, but I don't know, maybe a little bit. I mean, we don't really feel that it's getting warmer here in Israel. No, I would say that we feel more that the climate becomes more unpredictable, and the difference between the rainy season and unrainy season is getting bigger, but we don't feel that it's actually getting warmer. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, okay, we ran out of questions. Okay, guys, so just before I will welcome you, unmuting yourself, and we can chat, and then
Why don't you mention next week, Julia?
Yeah, okay, I will. All right, so next week we will be celebrating Shavuot. We will be celebrating Shavuot, which is, as you know, the celebration of receiving the Torah by Moses. So we should have been going to Sinai, to Mount Sinai, but we don't really know where Mount Sinai is, and anyhow, that's in Egypt. And therefore, we will have a Shavuot Bible-oriented presentation about who wrote the Bible, okay? So if we do not assume that the Bible was written by God and given to Moses, so then who wrote it and when? So Tuesday, we will be talking about who wrote the Bible with Asher Alshul. And Thursday, we will be going to Tzipori. And in Tzipori, among so many other things and so many beautiful mosaics, Tzipori is the Israeli mosaic capital, but I will also show you a little mosaic which has to do with the bathroom issue, which I've mentioned today. And we will also see Kentaur, and we, the half man, half horse made in mosaic. And we will see the Amazons and the Mona Lisa of the Galilee. And we will be talking about the Mishnah. So that's next week. Okay, Torah and Mishnah and mosaic. Okay. So thank you all. Oh yeah, by the way, I just wanted to say that I hope that I will be able to have a guest today. And we have no guest, so I can tell you who that was supposed to be. That was supposed to be Charlie Kando. Now, I've mentioned the name Charlie Kando quite a few times, and this is the guy who purchased, who was smart enough, to understand what these pieces of scrolls are, well, not all about, but how precious they are. Anyhow, he passed away quite a few years ago, so I could not invite him. But he has a grandson, and his grandson, his name is Charlie Kando, and guess what? He is an antiquity dealer in Bethlehem. And I know him quite well because he runs an antiquity store, which is one of the best antiquity stores in Bethlehem and Jerusalem combined. And among other things he has on display is an original jar from Qumran, which was kept by his grandfather. So anyhow, I really wanted him to be part of the presentation and, introduce himself, having the same name and same job. And he still has these amazing ancient artifacts. And once upon a time, one of the times I visited his shop, the artifacts, they are really amazing, and no doubt they are original. And there was one of them was particularly interesting. So I asked Charlie, hey, where did you take this one from? And you know what he answered? He answered, well, from one of these places where you find this type of object. In other words, same way as the Bedouins 70-something years ago were exploring the desert and finding artifacts, which is today called an antiquities robbery. So this is still done by their descendants. And we still have the antiquity dealers selling that stuff to people who love ancient things. So that's Charlie Kando, but unfortunately, because of the situation, it just didn't feel like, he's in a very bad mood, of course, because among other results of the current situation, the Palestinians who had working permits in Israel, they are temporarily prevented from entering Israel, and the economic situation in the West Bank, which is bad to begin with, is even worse now. So we don't have Charlie Kando. So hopefully some
Good
other
try.
day. Yeah, some other day.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. As usual, as very often Jewish community, they have ancient cemeteries. Is this Essenes tribe? Did have any Jewish cemeteries sign or anything like this?
Well, there is a cemetery. We actually looked at it. There was a flat area with like streets of stones. It was on the presentation. So each strip of stone is actually a grave, and there's somebody buried down there. David, bye. So yes, there is a relatively large cemetery. We do not know if it was Jewish or not Jewish because you cannot always identify. I mean, sometimes, especially when a Jew was buried in a cave, so you can find an inscription, you can find sometimes even a menorah or some sort of a ethnical identification. But here, it's a skeleton in the ground. So we don't know. We assume it is Jewish, but that's it. But yes, there is definitely a cemetery.
Thank
Thank you for including me in my prayers, in your prayers. Thank you. All right. Is there anybody who would like to say anything else?
Somebody just asked about the Zoom codes for next week.
Yeah, I just answered her, but if you want to say it out loud.
Okay, yeah, if you're not receiving a email, usually on Thursday or Friday, which gives you the following week's Zoom codes, then what I suggest you do is send an email to vfivolunteer@gmail.com. And in that email, just give us your name and your state and your email address, and you will be put on the list to get those weekly emails.
And if you don't get them, you can also, what I put is the tiny URL again.
Ah, yes.
No, we go to the tiny URL.
Yes, we have a backup. Thank you, Alana.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Julia. I hope you have a pleasant,
Steve.
I hope you have a pleasant remainder to this week and not too long a weekend. It's going to be
Yeah.
a tough time for a lot of people. We all feel for you. And we wish the volunteers were able to be there in support of the effort, which would be our normal situation, but we're precluded. So we have to do it long distance. So you have our thoughts and our prayers.
Thank you. You do it very well on the long distance. So, guys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all. Thank you again. And your support is highly appreciated, as well as donations.
Mhm.
And I hope to see you all, plus other guests next week.